everybody. Happy Friday to you, or whatever day it is that you're listening to this edition of This Week in Clean Tech, your favorite 15-minute roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy that we put together each week. Today, record day, Friday, June 26, 2026. We are in the summertime and living's easy. We got a returning guest on the horn. Emily Pontecorvo from Heatmap News will be joining us shortly. If you don't know my voice by now, I'm Factor This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Mike, how are we doing this morning?
We are fine. I want to let the audience know that you and I are off next week. We will not be taping. And as the harder working member of this duo, Paul Gerke, you will be back the week after to tape solo.
You're just going to deliver the news like this to the people and to me?
And I'll return the week of July 12th. We are grateful to everyone in our audience. And hey, man, I got to say, people got to read the Semaphore piece that interviewed new CEO and former Governor Tim Paulini. I thought he showed up really well in that piece. And Governor, we want you on the show. So I'm publicly lobbying you to get on this show. Just going to say that. All right. After David Wallace, who calls me 5 times a week to get on here. I don't know when we're going to let him on, but anyway.
You've got a laundry list, a wish list, if you will, of guests for the show. I can't believe you gave the people the bad news first, that we're not going to be here next week. I was going to save that for the very end, make the show kind of a compliment sandwich. But I guess sometimes you just got to eat the frog, right? So anyway, we're not here next week, and I'll be solo the week after. So bring some popcorn for that show. We do appreciate the feedback we get from you guys, the viewers, the listeners, those out there in the ether tuning in. You can make your opinions a part of the show anytime. If you got a story you want covered or 2 cents to share, just shoot us an email. We have a dedicated account just for the show, TWIC@Tigercomm. That's with 2 M's.US. As always, we have 5 hot stories on tap. Let's start with number 1. Mike, top story this week.
Returning guest, Valerie Volkovici from Reuters. You know, this is the second week in a row we've covered one of her stories, Paul. U.S. announces $17.5 billion in loans for nuclear power supply chain.
This story was everywhere. No disrespect to Valerie. We obviously chose her journalism for a reason, but this is some huge news, Mike. If you missed this one on Tuesday this week, the Department of Energy announced $17.5 billion in conditional loans that will help utilities and other energy companies buy what they need to shore up the U.S. commercial nuclear supply chain. The Office of Energy Dominance Financing, you might know it as the Loans Programs Office, will be backing as many as 5 loans, each supporting 2 1.1 gigawatt Westinghouse reactors per site. So we're talking about 10 total. Westinghouse, owned by Brookfield and Cameco, will partner up with 5 utilities to procure reactors and other long lead time items like reactor vessels and steam generators at a fixed price. Each project will then be jointly owned, with Westinghouse and that partner each required to commit $500 million before they can dip into the DOE funds. Energy Secretary Chris Wright has said 7 utilities have expressed interest, but wouldn't name them or say where the projects would go. Mike, I heard there were a few more utilities than that interested, maybe not at such a formal level. This sounds really interesting. It could make a big difference.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Secretary of War for energy, you know, the Department of War for energy. All right. Loans. They could help the administration reach its goal of 10 new large-scale reactors under construction by 2030, potentially 3 years ahead of schedule. He also says hyperscalers are showing an interest as electricity demand climbs with AI data center build-out, and called the projects not a risky endeavor. For context, the last reactors built in the U.S. at Georgia's Vogtle came in 7 years late and billions over budget. It was the only project Trump's first loans program office financed. Paul, story number 2.
Yeah, before we get to story 2, I'm glad you added that thing about Plant Vogtle, because that was going to be the first thing that I said, is when you say that projects are not a risky endeavor, you should talk to the folks down in Georgia that worked on Plant Vogtle in 7 years and billions over budget late. A lot of lessons to learn there, and I hope they talk to those people, but don't call this not risky, because it's a really complicated thing. There's a reason the nuclear renaissance has always been 10 years away for my entire lifetime. Okay, story number 3. Story number 2. We should go in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got an 8-month-old at home. You'd think I would know my numbers. Second story this week. Ajit Niranjan from The Guardian, titled "Spanish Households Save €10 per Month Thanks to Renewables Expansion," report finds. What's in it, Mike?
All right, Spanish households. They are saving €10 a month on average on electricity because of wind and solar built over the last 5 years. According to climate think tank Ember, typical bills would be 19% higher of electricity were still as tightly coupled to gas prices as they were in 2021. The decoupling is what shielded Spain during the Iran war. Gas prices jumped 60%, but Spanish electricity bills barely moved. They actually got slightly cheaper in April. So gas now influences Spain's power price just 9% of the time. That's down from 52% in 2021. In Italy, which has Europe's highest wholesale prices, gas sets the price 75% of the time. This is not an accident.
Yeah, we've been talking about how renewables are so much more important to the grids in Europe right now than in the US, because to be honest, they're probably 10 years ahead of us in a lot of ways. And it's not like they're there yet, and this is a pain-free process either. Wind and solar pumped out about 42% of Spain's electricity last year. That was up from 33% in 2021. An energy economist at Northwestern in Chicago cited ambitious policy on top of strong solar, decent wind, and existing pumped hydro storage is helping fuel that revolution out there. The consumer payoff isn't automatic either, though. Germany pushed that wind and solar share from 28% to 45% during that same span, 2021 to 2025. But the benefit in Germany was more muted because it mostly displaced coal and nuclear rather than gas. One researcher's caution here is that Spain's gas plants still set the price during key hours, during peak windows. Slow storage deployment means the grid can't fully soak up excess renewables yet. As he put it, Spain is less exposed to gas shocks, but still far from immune. Our third story this week.
Yeah, and I'm going to just interject. I think if people want to hear an absolutely fascinating discussion about where the policy aggression on renewables is going versus where solar and storage are going, both in the U.S. and overseas, you could do a lot worse than listening to Akshat Rathi's interview that just dropped last night with Kevin Smith, who we talked about his big raise recently. We've had Akshat on a couple of times, but it was an absolutely fascinating discussion. I'm going to put a link to that in the notes section when I post this episode on LinkedIn. So
Kevin Smith, you talking Silent Bob? Jay and Silent Bob fame? Kevin Smith, famous director?
No.
Don't
you remember we covered.
I'm just kidding. The Cypress Creek Renewables, Kevin Smith. I get it, man. I talked to the guy. I'm just yanking your chain. There's a Jay and Silent Bob fan out there that's cracking up right now. Story number 3, Mike.
You have lost your way. A third story. Blanca Begert from the LA Times. If AI data centers are exploding nationwide, why are so few being built in California? Why is that, Paul Gerke?
Probably because they don't want exploding data centers, Mike. No, not funny at all. Monterey Park, California became the first U.S. city to permanently ban data centers by popular vote earlier this month, if you missed that. A recent poll found about 70% of Californians don't want them anywhere near them. But unlike in Virginia or Texas, California has some structural barriers keeping data centers out. Industrial electricity prices more than double the national average. The same reason we don't see a lot of data centers up in like New York, for example. It's just too pricey. The math doesn't pencil. Long grid connection wait times, leaving some Silicon Valley centers sitting empty. We talk about interconnection all the time. Make sure to check out the new podcast coming out next week about grid generator interconnection with Advanced Energy United that myself just put together at the Transmission and Interconnection Summit out in D.C. And a state rule certifying any backup generator over 100 megawatts as a power plant. That's a big deal, too. That 100 megawatt cap keeps facilities pretty small. I mean, we're talking about huge data centers being built way bigger than 100 megawatts elsewhere. The average U.S. data center is expected to demand about 600 megawatts or even more by 2030. California's are all under that 100 side. Mike, your thoughts?
So you're admitting to being down here and not letting me know so we could meet up for lunch.
We don't have enough time on the show for me to explain how stressful this quick trip to DC was for me this week. You know, I had my kid with me. Did you want to meet the 8-month-old and discuss data centers?
I would like to. All right, and I want to know.
Got some mango on you.
We are both affable Midwesterners. I say data and you say data, and I'm
Let's
just
call the whole thing off.
First, let's
have a musical number on the show.
Let's start with the environment data center developers are facing. So 70% of all Americans do not want them built near them, and that number is climbing. 74% think that AI will be bad for the country. So if you go to datacenterbans.com, you can see a live map in place of bans that are in place or being considered across the country. Yeah, it's something. So with each passing day, data center developers are facing a tougher landscape. Some of the factors that are driving this landscape's hardening are existential, but many have to do with things that are within their ability to influence. And I think developers are going to have to overhaul their way to engaging communities better. Money alone is not going to buy this approval. So just check this out. PJM expects data centers to add roughly 40% to total demand by 2035. In California, the energy regulators expect just 2 gigawatts by 2030. That's just 4% of peak load. So California currently makes up 5% of national data center power demand, but the share is projected to fall to 1% as building accelerates elsewhere. One analyst said almost all the demand California generates is being serviced by Phoenix and Las Vegas instead. Paul, fourth story.
I think that last point really sums it up. All right, last story before we bring our guest in. Story number 4 this week, Chris Gillette from Works in Progress. It's titled, Why American Data Centers Can't Plug In. We're all data centers all the time today, Mike. What's in this one?
We are. All right, so Chris argues that America isn't short on electricity to power data centers. The problem is connecting the data centers and the new plants that serve them to the grid.
True.
So I thought this was absolutely fascinating. The grid, as many of you know, runs on a first come, first served basis in terms of getting your project hooked up. So high value projects often sit behind speculative ones. Check this out. Since 2000, 72% of connection requests were eventually withdrawn, which clogs the queue and forces costly restudies of everyone behind them. The piece argues that the fix isn't fixing the power source. It's removing the bottleneck of the queue. Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I know, oh man, I could talk about this for a really long time. I got to choose what I want to say here. So coming back from the heels of the InfoCast Transmission and Interconnection Summit, I've got fire in my mouth talking about this. And actually, the data that you shared, Mike, has actually been updated. So the data that you had is that an average power plant spent about 55 months in the queue by 2023. That's up to 60 months in 2025. And the number of interconnection request withdrawals is up even higher, north of 75% now. It's a big deal. These are regional problems we're talking about. The issues in PJM and SPP and MISO and CAISO are all very different. There's a lot of data we could dive into. If you're really interested in this stuff, I strongly suggest you check out the podcast that I so shamelessly plugged just a moment ago. I think there's a lot more teeth to that than whatever I can say and delay our guest even further. So, Mike, let's get to story number 5 and bring her in.
Yeah, our last story is by returning guest Emily Pontecorvo from Heatmap News. Sunrun, Tesla, and Renew Home have 16 gigawatts up for grabs. I'm going to note that another former guest, Jennifer Hiller, from that obscure invite-only email list you've never heard of, the Wall Street Journal, also wrote about this. But because we're big stars on the show, Paul, we insist on stars coming on. That's why we picked Emily to come on and talk about this. So
there you go.
Emily, big star. This is really cool. I think this is really innovative. Tell people who haven't read your piece yet, which we want them to do, what's the significance of what you found?
So I think actually what this news is more of a strategic announcement than a new thing that's happening. Basically, Sunrun, Tesla, Renew Home, these are 3 of the biggest home energy companies in the country, have come out and said, guess what? We have 16 gigawatts of capacity that we can make available on the grid through our distributed energy devices, solar panels, batteries, programmable thermostats, programmable water heaters. And so, what they're coming out and saying, we're on the market. This is for sale. This is a huge amount of capacity. This is 16 nuclear plants worth of capacity. And, basically to date, virtual power plants, which is, the name for this aggregated capacity between all these devices, they have pretty much played this niche role on the grid where they kind of turn on once in a while during a heat wave to help the grid, to help prevent blackouts. But what they're saying now is we think that this can play a much bigger role. It can meet the needs of data centers. It can, these devices can be called on every day, not just during a heat wave.
There's a question in my mind. Consumers, they need to agree to do this. You have all the stuff installed. What is the incentive for me as a homeowner to participate in this program if I'm in California, say?
You get paid. So yeah, I was actually having lunch with a friend the other day who lives in San Diego and has sun-run solar on his roof and Tesla battery in his garage. And he was saying, "Oh yeah, I just got an alert the other day saying that they were going to activate this VPP. Like, can you tell me about that? I said I was going to get paid, between $50 and $100 for this event." And that's a significant amount of money when you live in California and your electric bills are as high as they are. And what was funny was he said to me, "Why do they only do that once in a while? I've got battery available all the time that they're free to take it whenever they want." So he was kind of interested in getting paid more often.
Have these companies told you much about the level of response they're getting? Like, what's their customer base showing in terms of a willingness to participate, and what does it take to get people to participate?
Yeah, I guess I haven't discussed that as much with at least Sunrun, which is who I spoke to for the story. I mean, I think, their model, a lot of the customers that they have will lease their solar panels from Sunrun rather than buy them. They offer both options, but oftentimes these are leases. And I think often in the lease terms, that is one of their requirements, is that Sunrun says, we have to be able to kind of call on these devices once in a while to participate in these events. But for the sales customers, I'm not exactly sure how that works.
Emily, I'm glad you mentioned a minute ago that this was more of just like a, hey, this exists, because once I had a second to sit with that announcement, that's kind of where my head went to. I was like, well, it's not like they launched 16 gigawatts of new flexible, demand resources. We've been doing this stuff. Sunrun's been doing it in California. They had a massive power plant test last summer that I covered. It's just really the application to data centers and being able to tap into those distributed resources. Do you have any idea how quickly some sort of power plant might be able to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to start powering this thing off of home batteries and solar.
That's a little bit unclear. I mean, they're coming out and saying we have this available. I think the big question in all of this is, because they're going to go out to utilities, they're going to go out to data centers, and will those entities, are they ready to kind of take them up on this offer? There's probably some regulatory changes that need to happen, technological issues like data sharing between all the devices and the utilities. Like there's reasons why virtual power plants haven't been adopted kind of like at scale yet. And them just coming out and saying we have this capacity, I don't think it's going to solve those overnight. So I think there will be a little bit of time before we start to see that people take them up on this offer.
Well, Paul, we're just out of time. I think we need to go to our Cleantechers plural of the week. I just want to say that the ad that these people put together that we picked them for is so good, it makes me want to cry. And
an ad?
It is really cool. So, Paul, give it the description. This is your part of the show.
Yeah, so it looks like somebody maybe edited this script and took some important words out, but I'm going to go ahead and try to give it my best, Mike. So a lot of people like you talk about how renewables need to be positioned as like a classic American blue collar, fit with rural communities, sort of owning your land, owning your sunshine. And it really is that way. And Luigi Resta and Maile Resta just did that. And if you don't know these folks, I've known Luigi for a couple of years now. I profiled him when they broke ground on the project that we're shouting out here. Makes me feel like I've been in this industry for a hot second now. They're a utility scale developer, R Plus Energies out of Utah, just featured one of their crews doing work on a solar project, just like earlier generations of his family did in coal mines, showing the sort of connection between the old energy brethren and the sort of modern day workforce. We want to congratulate them for showing us how to make the case for clean energy to the country, and congrats to the biggest solar and storage site in Utah now operational out there, R Plus Energies. Big news this week. Congratulations to Luigi and Maile Resta, our Cleantechers of the week.
Yeah, man. We want to thank Brian Mendez, our wonderful producer, and Claire Quirin and Alex Peterson for helping gather these stories.
And thanks for sticking around for another episode of This Week in Cleantech. We do this show every Friday, except for next Friday. We're not going to be here. We're taking a little break. We'll be back the Friday after that, though, just a reminder. One last thanks to Emily for joining this week's show. Really appreciate you sharing your story. If you haven't read it yet, like we said, please get out and check it out. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe, leave a little feedback, share a story suggestion to the email link we mentioned. You could also check out every article we feature each week. There are links in the episode description as well as where this lives on factorthis.com. Until next time, people, be good.